My name is Sarah. I'm 24, and at the time of this incident, I was working a mid-level corporate job in a city where owning a car was more of a headache than a luxury. Parking alone would have eaten a third of my salary. The rideshare apps were just part of the infrastructure of my life, as natural as taking the elevator or paying for coffee on my phone. I had the apps downloaded. I had them optimized. I knew which surge zones to avoid and at what time of day. And I had a little mental checklist I ran through before getting in. Check the name, check the license plate, check the car model. 3 green lights and you climb in. That was the system. That was how you stayed safe, or at least how you told yourself you were staying safe. My routine was predictable. I'd finish my shift, walk 2 blocks to the designated pickup zone, and wait for a ride to take me to my apartment complex near the park. I took rideshares almost daily and usually spent the time answering emails or scrolling through my feed. Occasionally, I'd have a pleasant conversation with a driver who wanted to talk, and I was always polite, always tipped well, always gave 5 stars, unless something genuinely went wrong. It was a humid afternoon in late August, the kind of day where the air feels like a wet blanket and the sun reflects off the glass buildings with a blinding intensity. Even the shadows felt hot. I was exhausted in that specific way you get exhausted when you've been staring at spreadsheets for 8 hours in an office with recycled air and fluorescent lighting. Not physically drained, but hollowed out, scraped thin, like all the texture had been buffed off the inside of your skull. I just wanted to get home, take a cold shower, and forget about the quarterly projections I'd been massaging all day. When the app buzzed to tell me my driver was 2 minutes away, I stepped toward the curb, ready to zone out for 20 minutes. I was already composing the email I'd send from the back seat, already thinking about what I had in my fridge for dinner. A dark sedan pulled up, the windows tinted so deeply, I couldn't see the driver's face. I checked the plate. It matched. I checked the car model. It matched. 3 green lights. I reached out and opened the back door. I was hit by a wall of air that I can only describe as the smell of concentrated rot. It wasn't just old trash or a forgotten gym bag. It wasn't the smell of a guy who'd been working outside all day, or a pile of takeout containers left too long in the summer heat. It was the heavy, sweet, and metallic scent of something that had died and then left to liquefy under the seats. I know that sounds extreme. I know that sounds like something from a crime drama, and I want to be clear that my brain immediately, desperately tried to find a more innocent explanation for it. Maybe he'd picked up someone who'd been fishing. Maybe there was a bag of garbage in the trunk. Maybe someone had spilled meat. The human mind reaches, instinctively, for the benign explanation. It is extraordinarily reluctant to accept the disturbing one. I hesitated. My hand was still gripping the door handle, and for a fraction of a second, less than a second, maybe the length of a heartbeat, my body knew before my brain caught up. My body said, "Do not get in this car," but I didn't want to be the difficult passenger. I didn't want to cancel the ride and get charged. I didn't want to be rude. I climbed in and pulled the door shut before I could even settle into the seat. The driver screamed in a voice so loud and aggressive, it made my ears ring. "State your account ID." I jumped so hard, I bumped my elbow against the window. My heart was hammering against my ribs with a kind of violence I hadn't felt since I was nearly hit by a cyclist a few years back. That electric, full-body shock of sudden danger. I've taken hundreds of rides. Drivers ask for your name sometimes. They ask to confirm the destination. Occasionally, a nervous new driver will double-check the pickup address. But no driver, in all my years of using these apps, had ever screamed at me unprovoked. Not yelled, screamed, with hostility, with aggression, with the tone of a person barely containing something Fathy wanted to come out. I stammered out the information. I think I gave him some variation of my account name. my hands starting to shake as I fumbled with my phone. The driver didn't acknowledge me. He didn't nod. He didn't say okay or thanks. He just shoved the car into gear and jerked away from the curb so hard my head hit the headrest. The smell was getting worse. It was thick and stagnant, and every breath felt like an act of violation because he refused to crack any windows despite the heat. I tried to look at him in the mirror, but he was a statue, staring straight through the windshield with a rigid, unnatural posture, the posture of someone performing normality while something else was happening behind their eyes. I told myself to calm down. I told myself he was just having a bad day. I told myself that people have bad days, and maybe he'd just gotten a 1-star review, and he was frustrated. I opened my email. I tried to compose that message I'd been mentally drafting, but I couldn't concentrate. The smell was threading into every thought. The first real alarm went off when I realized he had missed the turn for the main bridge. I watched the blue dot on my phone drift further and further away from the highlighted route. At first, I thought, maybe the app was rerouting. Maybe there was traffic on the bridge. Maybe he knew a faster way. I gave it another 30 seconds. The dot kept moving in the wrong direction. I politely mentioned that the bridge was back there. I said it gently, the way you speak to someone you don't want to startle. He didn't blink. He didn't respond. He just drove. He drove me to a completely wrong location, a desolate, industrial part of town I didn't recognize at all. Low concrete, buildings, chain-link fences, a road that didn't seem to go anywhere in particular. No pedestrians, no other cars. When I corrected him more insistently this time, he said nothing. He just turned the car around in silence and drove. The smell filled my lungs with every breath. He then drove to a second wrong location, even further from my apartment than the first. We were moving in the exact wrong direction, deeper and deeper into parts of the city that I had never seen and could not locate on the map fast enough. That my gut was screaming at this point. The careful, rational voice that had been trying to find innocent explanations had gone quiet. In its place was something older and more honest. I told him to just let me out right there. I didn't care about the walk. I didn't care about the remaining distance. I just needed to get out of that car, out of that smell, away from those vacant eyes in the mirror. I reached for the handle. The door handle wouldn't budge. I pulled it once, thinking I'd done it wrong, grabbed it at the wrong angle. I pulled again, harder, with both hands wrapped around the lever. It didn't move. The child locks were engaged. I was locked inside a moving car that smelled like death, being driven by a man who screamed when I didn't expect it, and drove silently to locations that had nothing to do with where I was trying to go. The driver stared into the rearview mirror. His eyes were vacant and cold, not angry, not excited, not anything I could read or reason with. Just empty, the way the eyes of a person look when their focus is entirely interior, when they are calculating something you are not supposed to know about. "Rate 5 stars, he suddenly yelled. The command was so bizarre and so abrupt that for a moment it shorted out my fear. Rate 5 stars? The car was silent and hot. I could smell the rot again. He reached back toward my phone, not touching me, but reaching, his arm extending between the seats. I looked at the app. I looked at his face in the mirror. I tapped the 5 stars quickly. My thumb was shaking. The locks clicked open. I threw myself onto the pavement before the car had fully stopped. I didn't look back. I heard the car pull away behind me fast, and then the sound of the engine faded, and there was just the distant noise of the city and my own breathing, which was ragged and too loud, and not quite under my control. I walked the remaining 12 blocks in a daze, my legs trembling so much I had to stop and lean against a brick wall twice, just to keep from collapsing. Each time I stopped, I became aware of how quiet the street was, how far I was from my apartment, how completely alone I was in the aftermath of something that had ended but didn't feel finished. Reported the driver immediately and changed the rating to the 1 star he actually deserved. The response from the company was a generic automated email, a template, a form letter with my name inserted at the top and a case number at the bottom. No follow-up, no phone call, no explanation of what had happened or what they planned to do about it. No one ever told me what the smell was, or why he was so desperate for a 5-star rating, or where exactly he had been trying to take me. I have a theory, of course. Everybody who hears this story forms an opinion immediately, but I keep it to myself because saying it out loud makes it real in a way that I am not always prepared for. To this day, I check the door handles of every car before I even sit down. I test them. I lean in first, run my hand along the handle, and make sure it opens from the inside. Drivers sometimes look at me oddly. I don't explain. I just check. I still can't stand the smell of incense or heavy air fresheners because they remind me of what he was trying to cover up. Some things you just can't unsmell. Some suspicions, once formed, cannot be dissolved back into innocence. And some 5-star ratings tapped out with a shaking thumb while locked inside a stranger's car are not reviews. They are ransoms. Mark and his girlfriend had spent the evening at a friend's house low-key. Dinner and drinks. The kind of night that ends with everyone on the couch, watching something nobody's fully paying attention to. By midnight, they were ready to head back to his place. They lived about 1.5 miles away, but the neighborhood between the two houses was a dark, sketchy section of town where the streetlights were frequently out and the sidewalks were cracked and uneven. It wasn't the kind of place you wanted to wander through after the bars closed. They ordered a ride and waited on the porch, watching the quiet, empty street, listening to the distant sound of a dog barking somewhere in the dark. When the car arrived, they did the usual confirmation and climbed into the back. The car was dim, lit only by the blue glow of the driver's phone mounted on the dashboard. The driver was a heavyset man, somewhere in his 40s, with a face that Mark would later describe completely average, the kind of face you'd forget 10 seconds after seeing it, which made what followed feel even more dissonant. Average. Faces are not supposed to say the things this one said. The driver started the conversation with a question that immediately made the hair on the back of Mark's neck stand up. Did you two just escape from Sageview? Mark didn't know what he meant. At first, the word escape was strange. You escape from things that hold you. His first thought was that it was some kind of bar or venue he hadn't heard of. But a quick search later revealed that Sageview was a local psychiatric facility located very close to their pickup spot. The driver had looked at 2 young people leaving a residential house near a psychiatric ward at midnight and had decided, for reasons known only to him, that this was the most appropriate opening question. Mark tried to laugh it off, replying that they were just headed home after a fun night. The driver didn't join in the lightheartedness. He didn't smile or nod or move on. Instead, he let out a dry, hacking laugh that went on for way too long. The kind of laugh that has nothing to do with finding something funny. The kind of laugh that is performing itself for an audience that doesn't understand the joke. Then he said, voice perfectly level, "Well, I spent time at Sageview myself." Mark felt his girlfriend stiffen beside him. He tried to stay calm. He made a comment about how everyone is a little crazy in their own way, hoping to keep the driver in a conversational register that felt manageable. Keep it light. Keep it moving. Don't make him feel judged. These were the calculations happening silently in Mark's head while his face was doing its best impression of a relaxed person on a normal night ride. There was a long, heavy pause. The driver stared at the road, his hands steady on the wheel. Then he spoke again, his voice dropping an octave lower. "I got arrested at my therapy appointment." I said something that my therapist didn't like. Mark tried to catch his girlfriend's eye, but she was looking out the window. She had her phone out and seemed to be only half listening, unaware that the energy in the car had shifted into something that made Mark want to count the seconds until they arrived. He decided he had to keep the man talking. He wasn't sure why. Some instinct told him that silence, in that particular car, would be more dangerous than conversation. "What did you say?" Mark asked. His heart was thumping in his ears by now, a slow, heavy percussion underneath the sound of the engine. The driver didn't answer right away. He just laughed that unsettling laugh again and said, "It doesn't matter." And then, without a pause, without any transition, without any indication that this was going to be a strange thing to say, he asked, "What if I just kidnapped you?" Mark went completely silent. The question was posed in the same casual, conversational tone as everything else the man had said. Not aggressive, not threatening in any obvious way. Just curious. As if it had occurred to him, and he genuinely wanted to explore the idea out loud, the way you might say, "What if we took the scenic route?" Or, "What if we grabbed food on the way?" The driver began to describe a hypothetical scenario. What if, he said, the car suddenly stopped in the middle of a desolate road? What if Mark's phone had no battery? What if there was nobody around for miles, and the driver was the only person who knew exactly where they were? Mark clutched his phone. 43% battery. He opened his Maps app silently to track exactly where they were. He looked out the window. They were approaching a dark stretch of road, thick with trees on both sides. The kind of road you don't realize exists in a city until you're on it at midnight, and the streetlights run out, and the only illumination is the headlights of the car. You're trapped inside. Mark noticed, with a cold shock, that the driver wasn't even looking at the road anymore. He was staring at Mark through the rearview mirror, steady, unblinking. The car was moving at 40 miles per hour through a narrow road in the dark, and the man behind the wheel was not watching where he was going. He was watching Mark. The mirror held his cold stare. The engine hummed in the dark. Mark felt his pulse in his throat, his jaw, his temples. The trees on either side of the road were thick and black, and the road ahead was only visible as far as the headlights reached. "Pull over right here," Mark said. He tried to make his voice sound calm and certain, the voice of a man making a reasonable request, not a man who was afraid. The driver didn't slow down. If anything, the car drifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, toward the tree line. Mark grabbed the door handle with one hand and his girlfriend's arm with the other. She looked up from her phone for the first time, read the expression on his face, and went still. The car screeched to a stop. Not a gradual, cooperative stop, but a lurching, sudden halt, as if the driver had decided all at once. "Get out now," Mark said. He didn't wait for an answer. They scrambled out onto the dark pavement, Mark pulling his girlfriend by the hand. The door barely had time to open fully before they were through it. They didn't look back as they sprinted toward the nearest streetlight, Mark already unlocking his phone to dial 911. Behind them, the car sat perfectly still in the middle of the road, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The driver didn't move. He didn't accelerate away. He didn't roll down the window and call after them. He just sat there in the dark and watched them run. Mark didn't hear the engine start again until they had turned the corner and disappeared from sight. He will never know why it waited that long. He filed a report. He gave the police the driver's name, the license plate, the route, and the timestamps from the app. The investigation, if it can be called that, went nowhere. The driver hadn't technically done anything. He had asked a hypothetical question. He had stared too long in a mirror. He had said something unsettling in a car, and while that is terrifying when you are the person inside that car, it is not, under most legal frameworks. A crime. Mark thinks about that sometimes, about the gap between terrifying and illegal, about how much space there is in that gap and how many people are walking around inside it. He still wonders what exactly that man said to his therapist that was bad enough to get him arrested. He knows he'll never find out. But the question keeps surfacing, late at night, in the back of unfamiliar cars. When a driver looks at him in the mirror, it feels a second longer than it feels natural. Elena was on holiday with her boyfriend and his family, spending long, hot days at the beach and exploring the local cities. The kind of trip that feels effortless while it's happening and warmly textured in memory. All sunburn and late dinners. And cobblestone streets. One night, she and her boyfriend's sister decided to find a club. They were young, a bit drunk, and completely unfamiliar with the area. They had the confidence of people on holiday, which is its own specific kind of invulnerability. The sense that the usual rules are suspended, that the world is slightly more permissive than at home, that strangers are friendlier and streets are safer, and things generally work out. By 2 a.m., they realized the club had already closed. Elena was exhausted. The walk had taken longer than expected, and her feet were hurting, and the alcohol was making her head swim. And the night, which had felt full of possibility an hour ago, now just felt long. They stood outside a McDonald's, looking for a way back to their hotel. The apps weren't responding really oblidu to hospity cell service, or maybe the pickups were too far away. Elena stood on the curb and thought about her bed. A black car pulled into a nearby taxi spot, and Elena, desperate to get off her feet, approached the driver. "How much for a ride to the Bay Hotel?" she asked. A man, who looked to be in his 50s, told her it would be €10. Elena only had 5 left and pleaded with him, explaining they were tourists and that they were a little lost. The man smiled, not a cold smile, not a predatory smile, just a smile, the kind of smile that a helpful local might offer to a young girl who looked tired and a little out of her depth. "For you, 5, he said. Elena's boyfriend and his sister came out of the restaurant and were relieved she had found a ride. It felt like a stroke of luck, the kind of small kindness that travel sometimes offers, a reminder that people are generally good. But as they went to get in, the driver made a strange request. He insisted that Elena sit in the front seat, that her boyfriend didn't like it. He said so. Elena looked at the man, who was still smiling, who was being helpful and generous about the fare, who showed no sign of anything threatening, just an older man in a car wanting the girl to sit in the front. She was too tired to do the math. She told her boyfriend it was fine. She told herself it was probably just a cultural thing, a preference, a local custom she didn't understand. She climbed into the passenger seat. For the first part of the journey, everything seemed fine. They were chatting and laughing, the cool night air blowing through the open windows. The driver asked them questions about where they were from, about the UK, and about whether they were enjoying the holiday. He seemed like a typical, helpful local, exactly the kind of person who makes you feel good about humanity when you're traveling somewhere unfamiliar. Elena relaxed. She watched the lights of the city pass outside the window and thought about how she described this moment later. The kind stranger, the late-night adventure, the relief of finally heading back. Then he took Elena's hand. He kept his left hand on the wheel and used his right to reach across and grasp hers. It was not a brushing of fingers. not an accidental contact. It was a deliberate, firm grip. Elena froze. Every casual thought dissolved instantly. She thought, maybe he's just being friendly in a way she didn't understand. She thought, maybe this is normal here. She thought all the things you think when your mind is buying itself a few extra seconds before it has to accept what is actually happening. She tried to pull her hand back gently. He held it. Then he placed her hand on his thigh. He held it there tightly, his fingers wrapped around hers, pressing down. Elena moved over in her seat, pressing herself against the passenger door, trying to create distance without causing a scene inside a moving vehicle. At 2 a.m. on roads she didn't know. He wouldn't let go. She looked back at her boyfriend's sister, who was watching from the back seat with wide eyes, mouthing, "Are you okay?" Elena nodded. She was not okay. But what were her options? The car was moving. She didn't know where they were. She had €5 to her name and no reliable data signal, and the hotel was somewhere ahead in the dark. She nodded and tried to become smaller, pressing harder against the door, her shoulder blade against the handle, her whole body angled away. The driver let go. The conversation resumed as if nothing had happened. He asked another question about the UK. He laughed at something. Elena could see the lights of the bay in the distance, the faint glow of the hotel strip, maybe 10 minutes away. She kept her eyes on it. She thought, just get there. Just get there. Then he took her hand again. This time, he placed his hand on her thigh. His hand was heavy and hot, and Elena clamped her legs together and pressed herself so hard against the door that the handle dug into her back. The fabric of her dress felt impossibly thin. She went completely rigid, the way you go rigid when your body is trying to take up as little space as possible, when every muscle is braced against something it cannot fully name. "Take your hands off her," her boyfriend roared from the back seat. The driver laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "I am being friendly," he said. His fingers moved. Elena felt a sharp wave of nausea rise from her stomach. The lights of the bay were right there, so close. The car slowed, pulled to the side. She didn't wait for it to fully stop. She threw the door open with both hands, and she was out on the pavement, moving toward the lights. Her boyfriend scrambled out after the car as it sped away, and in the dark and the rage of that moment, he managed to kick the rear license plate hard enough to leave a visible dent in the metal. It was not a satisfying conclusion. It was what fury looks like when it has nowhere to go. The next morning, Elena spoke to a legitimate taxi driver at the hotel. She asked, as casually as she could manage, whether all the taxis in the area were black. The man looked at her with polite confusion. "No," he said. "All taxis here are white, with signs on top." Elena stood there in the hotel lobby and felt her stomach turn over completely. There were no legitimate black taxis in that town. The man who had offered her a ride for €5, who had smiled and told her it was just for her, who had insisted she sit in the front seat, was not a taxi driver. He was a man with a car. He had been parked outside a McDonald's at 2 a.m. in a tourist town, watching the street, and he had seen a teenage girl standing alone, visibly tired, visibly lost, and he had made a calculation. He had gotten what he wanted, more or less, and then he had driven away into the dark. She never saw him again. She never reported it to the local police, partly because she was on holiday, partly because she didn't have enough information, and partly because she was 17 and had consumed alcohol, and she was afraid of what reporting it would mean for her. This is the part of the story that doesn't end cleanly, because most of these stories don't. The memory of his hand on hers still makes her skin crawl. Years later, in other cars, on other nights, when a driver reaches toward the dashboard or adjusts the mirror or simply exists in the front seat while she is in the back. There is a fraction of a second where her body reacts before her mind catches up. That is what he left her with. A reflex she didn't choose. A response that belongs to him.